Water, a vital resource indeed. That's what this series will be about. It is imperative you understand that in an urban survival situation, nothing changes with the core principles, as I've stressed in other series. It goes shelter slash fire, then signalling, technically. But if you're not signalling, it goes straight to water and then food. So they're priorities. They're your fundamental survival priorities. Again, I'll say shelter and warmth as your first priority. Second priority, signalling. Third priority, water. Fourth priority, food. It only takes a few hours to perish. It only takes a few hours before you can perish from hypothermia if you don't have sufficient sheltering or fire. Signalling, or not signalling, won't do anything to you, but it's vital that you do that after getting some shelter and warmth so you can be rescued. But if that's not in the equation at that stage, though it should almost always be, water, because water is something that you can go 3, sometimes 4 days without, depending on your environment. And that's a lot more tolerable than dying from hypothermia. A lot of people always question other instructors, not so much myself, but their questions usually entail, why would you fucking have a shelter before water? No one's saying that water's not important, but you're looking at it wrong. If you freeze, you've only got a few hours before you perish. It just takes a few hours and you're gone. Your body won't cope, it'll shut down. So that's why that's first priority. Doesn't mean that water's not a priority. It just means that whilst you're hydrated and you're at the start of your experience in survival, just get the shelter and fire done, and then go straight to your signalling. If you're for some reason not doing that, water. It's not going anywhere. You've got at least a day to get water from somewhere. So that's the whole idea. If not 2 days or 3 days. Some people have gone 4 or 5 days without water, which is miraculous. But anyway, that's another story for another day. Then your fourth priority, food, which you can go for 2 or 3 weeks without from the start of your survival journey. So my point is, understand where water is in the spectrum or in the grand scheme of things in survival, because even though this is urban survival, whether it's urban survival, wilderness survival, fucking survival, outer space, all survival is survival and have the same core principles. Those same 4 priorities in the exact same order. Now, sometimes they may change a little because of special circumstances, or circumstances will dictate that you've already got shelter, or food's already taken care of, or water's taken care of, or perhaps you started your journey dehydrated. But that's a different story, and I'm sure you'll be able to get your head around that if that should happen. It's a very simple thing to understand and grasp. So this series is very, very important. The beauty is, in an urban survival situation, shelters are piss easy to obtain. It's not like the wilderness. You've really got to be doing something wrong in your life to not be able to score an urban shelter. Especially in catastrophic circumstances. It's admittedly harder to find urban shelters when things are going well, because most people occupy places, but when things aren't going so well, they're even easier to find. Though things like resources may be a bit more slim because people take them with them and so forth. But the point is, in an urban survival situation, sheltering still takes first priority, but it's very easy to get. You should get it within a few hours of looking hard enough. And then once you score that, water. In an urban survival situation, should you signal? It depends what situation you're in. If you're homeless, no, because you're homeless and it's a different situation to a war scenario or something. But if it's a wartime scenario, pandemic, you may need to signal for helicopter rescue, for some type of rescue, for anything. But even then, it's not the same as a wilderness environment. In the wilderness environment, signalling is almost always done after you've got shelter and warmth. In an urban environment, that's where it starts to become iffy. But nevertheless, my point is, you can easily score and you can easily find sheltering in an urban survival situation. Very, very easily. Just to illustrate my point, another place I've found, and because the grid is still up, and this is not an urban catastrophe or a war scenario or something, and it's just homelessness in my predicament, everything's here. Lights. I've got electricity. There's my laptop charger. Running water. Hot water too. Hot water, cold water. Fully vacant. How do I just pop up with these mansions? How do I pluck them out of nowhere? I mean, there's an olden style balcony. I'm overlooking a forest. It's just beautiful, and the sun sets that way. It's just magnificent. It's old style, but it's a mansion. It's a semi-mansion. It's not a blown out mansion, but it's almost technically a mansion because there's a sauna pool. There's a lot of things here, and I've managed to find it because I'm very meticulous when it comes to that. See, this is the charger, which I'll show you it turning on because it activates when I do this. Bang, on. I think I'll charge it properly though. Come on, charge, you cunt. Yeah. Bang again. Sheltering in an urban survival situation, piss easy. If I can do it in the homeless capacity, wherefore it's always harder because societal norms are mainstayed, they're not altered. So again, therefore, because it's much, much harder in my position to find houses, yet I'm finding it so easily, it's always going to be much, much more easy to find when people are fleeing cities. There's urban catastrophe, there's destroyed buildings left, right and centre. You're going to find an urban environment much, much easier to work with in terms of finding a shelter in a wartime scenario or a really big catastrophe. There are obviously a lot more hazards involved in such a wartime situation or catastrophe that has nothing to do with sheltering, which sort of offsets that, but that's another story. The point is the actual physical building, much easier to obtain in those circumstances. So that's why you go straight to water, which is the point of this series. And I'm elaborating on all this so you know where water is within all that order, within that explanation. So this being the case, what I will say is with water, it's going to be much harder to obtain during an urban catastrophe. Does that make sense to you? So it's the other way around. When it's peacetime, so to speak, but you're homeless like me, it's easier to find water and electricity and everything else, but harder to find the actual place with it. Whereas when it's wartime or there's a big urban catastrophe, it's far easier to find the house or the structure you want to stay in, but much, much harder to source water and electricity. A lot of the time there'll be no electricity in those places. You'll have to try and source electricity with special equipment or improvise something, or at least find a place with electricity and borrow that. But that's a video for another series. This is water. So we're going to go straight into every type of finding water and finding water, locating water, purifying it, filtering it, and then purifying it. So I'm going to say that again. Whether it's my current homelessness or whether it's an outright urban catastrophe, it doesn't matter. Whether it's easy to find water or hard to find water, I'm going to show you every type of way to source water. So again, the order of Water is very simple. Find the water, filter the water, purify the water, and then drink the cunt. That's simple.